My mother abandoned me at 13 for her new family. Years later, she came back crying, begging for $180K for urgent surgery. But when I saw the Instagram photos, I discovered she used my inheritance money to go on a European vacation with my stepsister. I'm 29 years old. I work in digital marketing for a mid-sized company, and I need to tell this story because there are still days when I can't believe everything that happened to me actually happened. The thing is, my own mother, the person who's supposedly meant to want the best for me, basically stole almost all the money my dad left me when he died. And when I say stole, I'm not exaggerating even a little bit. She literally scammed me in the most twisted way possible. And the worst part is that she planned the whole thing while I was devastated from my father's death. But anyway, I guess I should start from the beginning, so everything makes sense. My parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. Like a normal divorce where things just didn't work out between them, but at first they tried to keep it civil for my sake. My mom, Margaret, got shared custody, and I spent half the week with each of them. Honestly, the first few years after the divorce were weird but manageable. You know, 2 houses, 2 sets of rules, but nothing traumatic. Everything changed when my mom met Steven. She remarried when I was like 10 years old, and at first Steven seemed like a decent person. I mean, he wasn't my dad, but he wasn't mean to me either. Then my half-sister Ashley was born, and that's when I started to feel something was changing. It wasn't immediate. Honestly, it was more gradual. Suddenly, there was less space for my things at my mom's house, less time to do things together because Ashley needed constant attention, which I understand because she was a baby. But it was like I had gone from being the daughter to being more like an occasional visitor, who was kind of a bother. Steven started making rules just for me that didn't apply to anyone else. Like I had to wash the dishes after every meal, but Ashley never had to do anything. Or I couldn't watch TV after 8, but Ashley could stay up as late as she wanted. Things like that keep accumulating. You know what I mean? A moment that changed everything was when I was 13 years old. I was in my room at my mom's house, supposedly doing homework but actually trying not to cry, because I'd just had another fight with Steven about something stupid. I don't even remember what it was. I heard voices in the kitchen and recognized them as my mom and Steven talking. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, honestly, but their conversation kept getting louder and louder, and I couldn't help but hear. Steven was telling my mom that I was a burden, that we already had our own family and we didn't need to keep dealing with me every week, that it would be easier if I just went to live with my dad full-time. And what hurt the most? What still hurts today when I think about it, is that my mom didn't contradict him. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "You're right. It's probably best for everyone." That night, I called my dad crying and told him everything. David, my dad, got furious, but also told me that if I wanted to move in with him full-time, we'd work it out. And that's exactly what happened. Within 2 weeks, I was already living with my dad permanently. And honestly, it was the best decision of my life. My dad was amazing. I mean, he wasn't perfect or anything, but he always made me feel loved and valued. He worked as a civil engineer and made pretty good money, so we never lacked for anything. He supported me in everything, went to every school event, helped me with the math homework I hated, taught me how to drive, literally everything a daughter could ask for, from a father. My mom basically disappeared from my life after that. At first, she tried calling every 2 or 3 weeks, but the conversations were awkward and forced, and eventually the calls became less and less frequent until we just stopped talking. By the time I turned 16, I think months had passed since the last time I heard from her. She didn't come to my high school graduation, didn't congratulate me when I got into college. Nothing. It was like she had simply decided that Ashley was her only daughter, and I was a mistake from the past. She preferred to forget. And honestly, I also learned to live without her. It hurt at first. I'm not gonna lie, but my dad made up for both of them, and eventually I stopped expecting anything from her. College was great. I studied marketing and communications, made incredible friends, got internships at good companies. Basically, I was building my life and felt optimistic about the future. My dad was super proud of me. He always told me so. After graduating, I got a job at a digital marketing agency here in the city. Nothing spectacular, but it was a good start, and I liked what I did. Everything was going well. I mean, really well. Until my dad got sick. It was like 2.5 years ago. My dad started complaining that he felt tired all the time and that his stomach hurt. At first we thought it was work stress or maybe something he ate, But when the pain didn't go away, we went to the doctor. They did tests, more tests, and then more tests. When they finally gave us the results, I was with him in the oncologist's office. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. It had already spread to other organs. The doctor was very direct. Said he probably had between 4 and 6 months left. Maybe a little more with aggressive treatment, but there were no guarantees. Those 4 months were the hardest of my life. Watching my dad, this person who had always been so strong and capable, deteriorate little by little was horrible. He did chemotherapy, but it didn't work. The cancer was too aggressive. I quit my job so I could take care of him full-time. And he felt terrible about it. But I told him I didn't care. That he had been there for me my whole life, and it was my turn to be there for him. We spent a lot of time talking during those months, sharing memories, saying important things to each other. He told me he was proud of the person I had become, that he knew I was going to be okay, without him, that he had organized everything to make sure I'd be okay financially. My dad died on a Tuesday morning in hospice. I was there holding his hand. It was peaceful at the end. He just stopped breathing. He was 58 years old. Too young. Too soon. The funeral was small but nice. His work colleagues came, some neighbors, my friends, my dad's grandmother. My mom didn't come. Didn't even send flowers or a card. Nothing. At that moment, I wasn't even surprised. I had already accepted long ago that she just wasn't part of my life. After the funeral came all the legal and financial process. My dad had been very organized with his things. He had a clear will, life insurance, investments. Everything was in order. After paying funeral expenses and some small debts he had, I was left with an inheritance of $300,000. It was a lot of money, more money than I'd seen in my life. The lawyer advised me to put it in a high-interest savings account while I decided what to do with it. Maybe invest part of it, use some for the down payment on a house eventually, that kind of thing. I was still in shock from my dad's death. So I basically did what the lawyer suggested and tried not to think too much about the money. About 2 months after my dad died, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. It was my mom. The message said something like, "Hi, Charlotte. I know it's been many years and you're probably angry with me, but I just found out that David died and I wanted to express my condolences. I know how much you loved him." It also said that Stephen had died about a year ago from a heart attack and that she and Ashley were alone now, and that she had been thinking a lot about me and how things ended between us, and that if I ever wanted to talk, she would be available. Honestly, my first reaction was to delete the message and ignore her completely. She hadn't been there for me in over 15 years, didn't come to my dad's funeral, and now suddenly she wanted to reconnect because she had also lost her husband and probably felt lonely. But there was a part of me, a stupid and hopeful part that never really stopped wanting to have a mom, that thought, maybe people change. Maybe after all these losses we can start over. Maybe I can finally have a relationship with my mom. That part of me won. I responded after a few days. I kept the message short, something like, "Thanks for the message. Sorry to hear about Stephen. I'd be willing to talk if you want." She responded almost immediately, saying she'd love that we could meet for coffee next week if I was available, and that's how it all started. The first meetings were weird but not terrible. We'd meet every 2 weeks at a coffee shop halfway between our houses. She told me about her life, about how things had been with Stephen, about Ashley, who was now like 19 years old and was in community college studying graphic design or something like that. I told her about my job, my apartment, mostly superficial things because I still didn't completely trust her and didn't want to share too much. But little by little, we started talking about deeper things, about the divorce, about why she chose Stephen over me, about all those lost years. My mom apologized to me, or at least a version of an apology. She said she had been young and stupid, that Stephen had manipulated her, that she regretted not fighting harder to keep me in her life, that she thought about me all the time, but was afraid to contact me because she assumed I hated her. Hearing all that felt good. Honestly, it felt like I was finally getting the acknowledgement I had needed for so long. I started letting my guard down. We started seeing each other more often, once a week, then twice a week. Ashley came to some of the meetings, and although things were a bit awkward with her too, it seemed like she genuinely wanted to know me as an older sister. This continued for like 4 or 5 months. By that time, I felt like we were really rebuilding something, that maybe we could have a real relationship after all. I never specifically mentioned my dad's inheritance, but I did mention casually at some point that he had left me some money and that I was doing okay financially. I didn't give figures or details, just that. Looking back, I should have been more careful. But at the time, I thought I was sharing with my mom like any normal daughter would. One day, my mom called me, crying hysterically. She said she had an emergency, that she needed to see me immediately. We met at the usual coffee shop and she could barely speak between sobs. She finally managed to tell me she had a serious back problem, that she had gone to the doctor and they told her she needed urgent surgery, that she had multiple herniated discs, and that if she didn't get operated on soon, she could become paralyzed. She said the health insurance she had was terrible and only covered a very small part of the procedure, that she needed to go to a specialist in another state because he was the only one who could do this type of complex surgery, and that she needed $20,000 as an upfront payment before they could even schedule the surgery. I was in shock. I asked her why she couldn't get a loan or use credit cards or something like that. She said her credit was terrible after the debts Stephen left when he died, that banks had rejected her, that she had already tried everything. She showed me documents that looked legitimate, hospital papers with the diagnosis, surgery quotes, everything looked official. She was crying and saying she understood if I couldn't help, that she didn't want to be a burden, but that she had no one else to turn to, and she was so afraid of becoming paralyzed. At that moment, I was still dealing with grief over my dad. I still felt vulnerable and alone, and seeing my mom like that, so desperate and scared, basically destroyed all the defenses I had left. I thought about how my dad had helped me my whole life, how he always said family was the most important thing, and I thought this was my opportunity to help my mom in a way she never helped me. I thought maybe this would solidify our relationship, that it would show her I was a better person than she was, because I was willing to help her even after everything. I told her yes, that I would give her the money. Her face when I told her that, God, she looked so relieved and grateful. She hugged me tight and told me I was an angel, that she would never forget this, that she was going to pay me back every penny as soon as she could. She said she needed the money in 3 days because that was the deadline to secure the appointment with the specialist. I told her it was okay, that I would transfer the money to her account. This is where things got weird. But I was so emotionally involved that I didn't see the red flags. The next day, my mom called me and said she had just talked to the hospital and there was a problem with the insurance, that they were actually going to need more money than they thought. Now she needed $50,000. I said okay. A bit surprised but still willing. Then it was $100,000 because supposedly she needed to stay in the hospital longer than anticipated. And then it was that Ashley also needed to come to take care of her during recovery, and they needed money for hotel and food and transportation. The amounts kept going up. In the end, I ended up transferring $177,000 to my mom's bank account over the course of 5 days. $177,000. More than half of my inheritance, the money my dad worked his whole life to leave me, disappeared from my account in less than a week. My mom promised she would send me all the hospital documentation, the receipts, everything, as soon as she got settled there. She said the surgery was scheduled for the following week and that Ashley was going to go with her to help. The night after they made the trip to the supposed hospital in another state, I was sitting in my apartment, feeling weird about the whole situation. I couldn't identify exactly what was bothering me, but something felt wrong. I tried calling my mom several times, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I sent messages to Ashley, but she didn't respond either. I told myself they were probably busy with hospital procedures and getting settled and they'd contact me soon. 2 days later, I received a message from my friend Nicole, one of my best friends since college. The message said, "Hey Charlotte, I don't want to get involved where I shouldn't, but I need to show you something," followed by 6 Instagram screenshots. The screenshots were from Ashley's account. In the photos, Ashley was in Paris. In Paris? France. Not at a hospital in another state, literally in Paris in front of the Eiffel Tower, at a super fancy cafe, in what looked like a luxury hotel with a view of the city. The posts had captions like, "Living my best life," and "Paris is always a good idea," and "Thanks mom for this incredible trip." There were photos of her and my mom together drinking wine, eating at expensive restaurants, in designer stores. I sat there, staring at those photos, unable to process what I was seeing. My first reaction was to think there had to be a mistake, that maybe these were old photos Ashley was posting now. But no, they had dates from literally that day and the day before. I started searching more on her Instagram and on my mom's. And while my mom's was private, Ashley had tagged several places in Paris, and there were more photos. Dozens of photos of the two of them having a luxury vacation. While I thought my mom was in the hospital recovering from back surgery, I felt like someone had thrown ice water on me. My whole body started shaking. I called the number that was supposedly the hospital my mom had given me. An automated voice answered, but when I tried to ask for the surgery department, they told me they had no record of any Margaret with my mom's last name as a patient. I called 3 different hospitals in that area. None of them had any record of her. I immediately went to my bank and froze any pending transfers. I had authorized an additional payment of $15,000 that hadn't been processed yet. Thank God I managed to cancel it. But the $177,000 was already in her account, and she had already used it, presumably to finance this trip to Paris. I sat on the floor of my apartment and cried. I don't know how long. I just cried until I had no tears left. The next few weeks were absolute chaos. My mom and Ashley eventually started responding to my calls and messages when they realized I knew the truth. At first they tried to deny it, then they tried to justify it with ridiculous excuses. My mom said she had intended to get the surgery, but at the last minute decided she needed time to think about it, and that she had always wanted to go to Paris with Ashley, and that she was going to pay me back very soon. Ashley said she didn't know anything about where the money came from, that Mom had told her she'd won the lottery, which was obviously a lie because she had been there in several of our conversations about the supposed surgery. I tried to reason with them, to make them understand the magnitude of what they had done. But they didn't care. My mom even sent me a hospital invoice that was so obviously fake it was laughable. Literally, it looked like something she had made in Microsoft Word with the hospital logo pasted from Google Images. When I told her I knew it was fake, she got angry at me, said I was an ungrateful daughter and that after everything she had done for me, raising me during my early years, I couldn't help her when she really needed it. The hypocrisy was incredible. Ashley started a GoFundMe saying they were stranded in Paris without money to get back, which was a lie because they had return tickets already purchased with my money. My cousin Samantha, who had also had problems with my mom in the past, sent me the GoFundMe link and told me that my mom and Ashley had been scamming several family members with similar stories. Apparently, I wasn't the only victim, just the one who had the most money to steal. When they finally returned home, like a week after I discovered everything, my mom had the audacity to contact my paternal grandmother and ask for my address because supposedly she wanted to come explain everything to me in person. My grandmother, who is a saint but isn't stupid, told her exactly what she thought of her and didn't give her my information. But that didn't stop my mom. Somehow she got my apartment address, probably from some letter or document she had seen in one of our meetings, and showed up at my door. I didn't let her in. We talked through the closed door with the lock on. She tried every angle. First she apologized, then she got angry, then she tried to make me feel guilty, saying, how could I do this to my own mother, that she gave me life and I owed her everything. I just kept saying to leave or I'd call the police. Eventually she left, but not without first yelling that I was a horrible person and that I would regret treating her like this. What happened next was almost comical in how absurd it was. The landlord of the building where my mom and Ashley rented an apartment contacted me. He said, my mom had told him I had promised to pay her rent for the next 6 months, and he was waiting for payment. Apparently my mom owed them 3 months' rent already and they were about to evict them, so she had made up this story about me to buy time. I sent the landlord screenshots of the conversations where my mom admitted to the scam and told him that under no circumstances was I going to pay anything. That's when I decided enough was enough. I hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit against my mom and Ashley for fraud, embezzlement, and I also added something about defamation for going around saying I had promised to pay their rent. My lawyer said, we had a very strong case because there was a lot of documentary evidence, the Instagram screenshots, the conversations where they basically admitted what they had done, the fake hospital documents, everything. And the legal process took like 8 months. But it was worth every penny I paid in lawyer fees. During that time, my mom and Ashley tried several times to contact me, sometimes threatening to sue me themselves for harassment or defamation, other times begging me to drop the lawsuit and promising they would pay me back little by little. I blocked their numbers, blocked their social media, basically erased them completely from my life. The judge ruled in my favor. He ordered my mom to pay me the full $177,000, plus interest and legal costs. The total amount was something like $195,000. He also determined that Ashley had to pay me a portion because she had been complicit in the fraud and had used the money knowing where it came from. Have they been able to pay me? Not really. They set up a payment plan where supposedly they're going to pay me like $500 a month, which means I'm going to get all my money back in like 30 years if they keep paying. But at least I have the court judgment, and if they inherit something or win something, I can claim those funds. My lawyer also managed to put a lien on any significant future income they have. You know, what's the saddest thing about all this? It's not the money. Although God knows it hurts to have lost more than half of what my dad left me. The saddest thing is that I really believed I was finally going to have a mom again. I had hope, like an idiot, that we could rebuild something after all those years. And she basically saw me as an ATM, waited until I was vulnerable enough after my dad's death, planned this whole elaborate scam, and didn't feel an ounce of guilt. According to my cousin Samantha, my mom still tells people that I'm a horrible daughter who denied her medical help when she needed it most. The version she tells is that she was going to get the surgery, but I changed my mind and asked for the money back, and that's why she had to cancel and use the money for other things. The level of self-delusion is incredible. I've spent a lot of time in therapy since then trying to process all of this. My therapist says what my mom did is classic financial and emotional abuse, and that she likely has some kind of personality disorder. She says it's not my fault for trusting her, that it's natural to want to have a relationship with your mother. But there are still days when I feel like the stupidest person in the world for not seeing the signs, for handing over all that money without investigating more, for believing her fake tears. The positive part, if there is one, is that this taught me who's really worth it in my life. My grandmother has been incredibly supportive. My friends like Nicole, who showed me the Instagram photos even knowing it was going to hurt me. They are my real family. I went back to work about 6 months after all the drama, got a better position at a different company with better salary. I've been rebuilding my savings little by little. I'm not going to have the $300,000 my dad wanted me to have, but I have enough, and I'm okay. I cut contact completely with my mom and Ashley about a year ago. I don't respond to messages, don't open letters, nothing. At first it was hard because there was still a part of me that wanted to believe they were going to change, that they were going to really apologize, but eventually I accepted that's never going to happen. Some people just don't have the capacity to see beyond themselves, and my mom is one of those people. Ashley probably learned everything from her and is going to follow the same path. Last week was the 3rd anniversary of my dad's death. I went to the cemetery and sat by his grave for a while. I told him everything that had happened, although I'm sure somehow he already knows. I asked him for forgiveness for being so naive with the money he worked so hard to leave me. I imagined what he would tell me. Probably something like, Mija, money can be recovered. The important thing is that you're okay and that you've learned who deserves your trust. And he's right. Or he would be right if he could talk. I'm okay. I really am okay. Some scars don't heal completely, but you learn to live with them. And honestly, at this point, I feel more relieved than anything to not have my mom in my life. It's better to be alone than to be surrounded by toxic people who only see you as something to exploit.